So it is championship weekend, and I have come with the most amazing of coffee mugs on this fine, chilly. It wasn't very chilly yesterday. It was actually like 70 degrees out here. Chilly Saturday morning, chilly enough to the point where part of me is wishing that I had my hoodie. Yeah, no, it is freezing. I think the air conditioning in my apartment is either turned up to full blast or just not working at all, and that tends to be the case. But happy championship weekend. This is, of course, uNIVERSITY, uSTADIUM's premier only college football show. I am Zach Berman. I am cold. You know what kept me nice and toasty at night, though? The fact that I am already 2 for 2 in my picks. I'm not going against the spread this week just because the only picks that you're really making, of course, it's championship weekend, there's only 4 or 5 really important games. And a lot of the picks, I have teams both winning and covering, so it's tough to really go against the spread here. I did, however, if you've downloaded the app, if you haven't, I suggest you do it. I did pick UTSA. The Roadrunners have won the Conference USA after beating Western Kentucky in a game that they were not favored, but UTSA pulled out all the stops at home. CUSA is one of those rare conferences where a team gets to host their conference championship game, and they packed about 40,000 into the Alamo Dome. It was awesome to see. Roadrunners advance. I know that what do you call it? The definition's up there somewhere, but the super fast birds or whatever their dictionary term is, they've won their conference. Chaparral birds or chaparral cocks are 2 species of fast-running ground cuckoos with long tails and crests. They have won Conference USA. More importantly, though, in the realm of Power 5 football, Oregon does not match up with Utah well at all. They match up about as well as with Utah as a vinegar matches up with baking soda. It doesn't work. And to say that Utah dominated Oregon, that's probably putting it lightly. Utah just mauled them from start to finish. And I always said that Oregon is a good team, but their weakness was always at quarterback. And not only is Anthony Brown just a game manager at best, and he showed that last night, losing C.J. Verdell was a killer. And Travis Dye is a good running back. He's not going to be able to pick up the production that Verdell was putting down. And you couple that with a Utah offense that's pretty efficient and a Utah defense led, of course, by Devin Lloyd, who's starting to creep his way into top 15 draft pick discussions. Probably one of the best middle linebackers in all of college football. And you have, for the first time in a long time, a Utah Utes team that will be heading to the Rose Bowl. Utah kills Oregon 38-10. First time since they joined the conference that Utah has won the Pac-12. The first time they will be playing in the Rose Bowl since when has Utah played in the Rose Bowl last? I don't know if they've ever played in the Rose Bowl. Because remember, they were not Power 5 until the Mountain West let them go. So anyway, what a win for Kyle Whittingham. What a win for that Utah program. Truly a massive achievement. Their first conference championship in forever. And this is the first time in the history of the program that the Utah Utes will be headed to the Rose Bowl. So congratulations to the Utes, their fans, Coach Whittingham. What an achievement. And for Oregon, I suspect things are going to get a lot more difficult in the coming days with the coaching carousel stuff, but I'll get into that in the back half of the show because there is just so much to talk about today, like an obscene amount of stuff to talk about. And we continue with today's slate, and I don't really feel like it's a very upset heavy slate today. There's one that I'm pretty confident in, and that's about it. And I think it's a pretty risky go for it, but I'll tell you my picks right now. We start with the early games, which begins with, the Big 12. How about Oklahoma State finally getting rid of the boogeyman? They beat OU last night for the first time since 2014, or last weekend for the first time since 2014 in a Bedlam game for the ages. Their reward is a Big 12 championship game against the Baylor Bears. How about Dave Aranda, the job he's done in Waco? Does he stay in Waco longer than this season? I don't know, but maybe he wants to build something down there. I look at Baylor and I look at Oklahoma State. Baylor, they're just about out of the playoff conversation with that second loss. Oklahoma State, though, they're number 5 in the nation. For the first time in a while, a Big 12 team is really in the thick of things based on defense. And I think Oklahoma State, they're the first team in if somebody in the top 4 falters this week. Of course, Georgia is in. They're done. Even if they lose today, they are in the playoff, and that is that. So we already have one team that's just about set in stone. So Georgia is in, chalk them down. But Oklahoma State, they're the next man up. Oklahoma State's favored by 5.5. I do have them winning and covering today. I just think that I like their weapons on offense too much, and I think their defense is just going to overwhelm Baylor. So Oklahoma State, they win. They do their part. On to the MAC championship. Kent State and Northern Illinois games in Detroit. It's an early game. Kent State's favored by 3.5. I'm going to go Kent State. Truth be told, I haven't paid attention to the MAC that much at all. So just going to roll with the favorite here. The Mountain West, another one of those weird conference games or conference championship games where it's played at the home field of one of the two teams. If you remember, before the Chargers got there, moved into SoFi, they were playing at Dignity Health Sports Park, which is the soccer stadium down the road in Carson, California. That's where this game is being held. Of course, San Diego State's currently in the midst of getting a new stadium, so this is their temporary home. That San Diego State and Boise State. San Diego State's favored by 6. This is a tough game. I think Boise State's better than their record says they are, but I'm just going to roll with the Aztecs. Make it nice and easy ahead of the big games. I am going with Mr. Punt God himself, Matt Araiza. The punt god, one of the greatest punters you'll ever see in college football. If you want to watch some like special teams prowess, make sure to tune into this game. Yes, absolutely. You got to support the punt god. So we roll San Diego State onto the Sun Belt Championship. App State and Louisiana. Of course, Louisiana lost their coach, Billy Napier. He took the Florida job. So Louisiana does not have a coach. App State is favored by 3 as a result. And on the road, I think I'm going to go with the Mountaineers. So give me App State. I think that's a excuse me. App State on the road over the Raging Cajuns. Hold on just a second. as I was saying, SEC championship, of course, Georgia is in. We already know their story. The defense is smothering, the offense sufficient. Download the uSTADIUM app for sure. But can Alabama stand a chance against them? And I was not impressed by Alabama last week, even though they did beat Auburn. Of course, Auburn's a 6-6 team. It took them into 4 overtimes. Yeah, I know the Iron Bowl is always competitive, especially when it's at Auburn. But does Alabama have the offensive firepower to put up with Georgia? And can they go pound for pound with the Georgia defense? I think Bama makes this a fight. I just know too much to doubt Nick Saban. But at the end of the day, I think for the first time ever, the first time in program history under Kirby Smart, the Dogs will best the Tide. And Georgia will go to the playoff as the undisputed number 1 seed, an undefeated regular season. Georgia over Alabama, but the Tide make it close. Bryce Young will maybe, just maybe, provide the blueprint to the rest of the country on how to defeat this Georgia defense. I don't think it's the defense that winds up getting the job done for the Dogs. I think Stetson Bennett and his motley crew of receivers and running backs, look out for the Georgia offense to make a couple big plays down the stretch. I think it's the side of the ball that we don't talk about for the Dogs that gets done. Onward and upward, the American Athletic Conference Championship, Houston at Cincinnati, the biggest game ever played at Nippert Stadium. Houston's ranked 21st. They're a good team. And Dana Holgorsen has really brought the Cougs back from the brink. I got a gut feeling on this one. And I think Cincinnati wins. I'm not sure they win big enough. Spread's at 10.5. This is a close, scary game for Cincinnati. This is a nail-biter of a game. For whatever reason, I think this is the best game of the weekend. 4 o'clock kick on ABC. This is one that you're not going to want to miss. I'm taking Cincinnati. It is a scare and a half for the Bearcats. And it will definitely, of course, with the playoff selection show tomorrow, there's not going to be that much time to think about it. There's going to be a whole lot of discussion, a short amount of time of, could they handle Houston? Not really. Are they capable of handling another team in the top 4? I don't know. That's going to be the big discussion tomorrow morning. But Cincinnati will get it done eventually. Maybe a big play late in the game. Desmond Ridder is going to have to be that guy down the stretch for Cincy. But the Bearcats will squeak it out, and they will go into Selection Sunday undefeated as well. And that brings us to the night slate. And this is where I think things get a little bit spooky. I can roll things back throughout this stream the entire season, and there are several moments, and Henry can confirm this, when I said that Michigan is going to beat Ohio State this year. And somewhere along those lines, maybe early November, I started watching what Ohio State was doing, and I said, I don't know about that. And I had a little bit of a 360. Turned around 180. I decided to bolt in the other direction. I jumped the gun, and I was wrong about Michigan. They did beat Ohio State. And Ohio State had a big blow to their future last night as Quinn Ewers, the number 2 overall quarterback prospect ever, only behind Trevor Lawrence, has announced that he is transferring from the program. The rumor has it that he wants to stay close to home, which is Texas. So look out for A&M and look out for University of Texas to land Mr. Ewers. But enough about Ohio State. They didn't beat Michigan last week. Michigan, all the talk has been about Harbaugh and has he gotten over the hump? He got a $500,000 bonus for winning the SEC or the Big Ten East. And I think these Wolverines are riding into Indy fat and happy against an Iowa team that's got nothing to play for other than a Rose Bowl. It's a big, big, big spread. Michigan is favored by 11. But there's always one upset in Championship Saturday, which is why, and I had to choose one. But I think that Michigan has let the talk get to their heads, which is why I think Iowa crashes the party and beats Michigan tonight, effectively wiping the Big Ten out of the playoff. So take that. Henry says, go blue. I would love to see Michigan win this game, but there is something deep down that's telling me, Zach, if you got to pick an upset, if you got to appease the masses, pick against the least proven team here, and that would be Michigan. ACC title game, Pitt and Wake Forest. I am riding with Monmouth County's finest, graduate of Ocean Township High School. Yeah, I said it. I'm going to give him some street cred. And my number one QB in the draft coming up, that would be Kenny Pickett and the Panthers. So Pitt knocks off Wake Forest tonight in Charlotte and gets a spot in, I believe, either the Peach or the Fiesta Bowl, because the Orange Bowl is a a playoff semifinal. What does that set up tomorrow? Selection Sunday 2021. Should my picks amount to anything, that would mean that 2 and 3 both go down. Cincinnati would stay put in the top 4. But I think if you want chaos, you have to root for what I'm rooting for, which is why my prediction for who will be in the college football playoff tomorrow will be 1, Georgia. We already know that. 2, Oklahoma State will have the number 2 seed tomorrow afternoon. So I know there are going to be some oohs and ahs and whoa, you really think that? 2 will be Oklahoma State. 3, if we're judging by how the College Football Playoff Committee has handled head-to-heads, they're going to give the team with the head-to-head victory the higher seed, and that, of course, would be Cincinnati. So the Bearcats will be number 3, but number 4, if you're going by what I'm saying, head-to-head over who, you might ask, the Bearcats now possess the best win of the season over Notre Dame. And the Irish, the Fighting Irish, number 6 in the college football playoff polls this week, not active this week, will back their way into the playoff as the number 4 seed, setting up Georgia, Oklahoma State, Cincinnati, and Notre Dame. Chaos is upon us in the college football playoff. Oh, yeah, and USC plays Cal tonight. I completely forgot about that game. That game is completely irrelevant. I'll pick USC. Why not? I think that's just about as good of a segue as possible onto the coaching carousel stuff, because I had been tipped off about a month ago by a friend who's got much, much better sources than I do that Lincoln Riley was thinking about leaving Oklahoma for the not the USC job, the LSU job. Of course, this was after Ed Orgeron had announced that he was stepping down from LSU. Now, it was a shock to find out that Lincoln Riley was leaving Oklahoma not for LSU, but for the bright lights of Southern California. Lincoln Riley, of course, went on to take the USC job. Do I think Lincoln Riley is a good fit for USC? Yes. I wholeheartedly believe that Oregon, Mario Cristobal is a phenomenal recruiter, but that program's just basically Penn State of the West. You have an insane home field advantage, a coach that can recruit, but they always choke down the stretch. I think Oregon is a 9-10 win team at best under Cristobal, which could change because Cristobal might be on his way out, but I'll get to that in a bit. USC has a chance to really get Los Angeles back in terms of their talent. A lot of LA's talent nowadays is going to Oregon or going to the SEC, and Riley is a wizard recruiting. We already know this. He can bring prestige and flash and the wins and losses that these fans in LA really had been looking for. They weren't getting out of Clay Helton. I think he can bring it back. I think USC is once again a powerhouse under Lincoln Riley. But as great of a fit as I think Lincoln Riley is with USC, I think Brian Kelly is a horrendous fit at LSU. I was stunned to see Brian Kelly leave Notre Dame. He has carved out such a niche there. I think at Notre Dame, and I've said this a gazillion times, one of the most underrated coaches in college football, does not get the credit he deserves. Notre Dame, I had them as an 8-win team this year. I think they make the playoff now. And a lot of that is due to Brian Kelly. But, of course, Kelly's a Massachusetts guy. I don't think – it's really not about the geographical stuff as much as it is. I don't think Brian Kelly has the personality to be an LSU head coach. I think you need to be a little bit nuts, be a little bit unhinged, have a little bit of madness flowing through those veins to be an LSU Tiger. And no, I'm not talking about Brian Kelly going down to LSU and faking a Southern accent, which he clearly did. You could Google it. There's no way he learned how to pronounce family as family in one night. Because we went down there and he sounded like Foghorn Leghorn. It's beautiful. But I just don't think that down at, especially because, Brian Kelly's two biggest contributors to why he was so good at LSU were his coordinators. And Marcus Freeman and Tommy Rees, his offensive and defensive coordinators, decided to stay back at Notre Dame. They were blindsided by the announcement that Kelly was leaving for LSU. Marcus Freeman, of course, is Notre Dame's new head coach, which is awesome. 35 years old, and now the coach of one of the most historic programs in all of the land. You saw the players' reactions to him getting announced as the new head coach. They love it. The players were begging him to stay. Tommy Rees is staying as offensive coordinator. I think Notre Dame winds up better because of this. And don't be surprised if they get into the playoff. How great of a screw you to Brian Kelly would it be if Notre Dame went on a run? But I think that Brian Kelly, I don't know if he's going to be able to compete with Saban or Smart or even Billy Napier or a guy like, Lane Kiffin, Jimbo Fisher. I don't see it. I think Kelly lasts 5 years at LSU tops before he either steps down or is canned. I'm not expecting success here. So, Baton Rouge, I'm sorry, but Brian Kelly will not be a success at LSU. He just does not have the personality. He does not have that LSU wackiness that a guy like Les Miles or a guy like Ed Orgeron had that really is able to endear himself to the fans. I don't see it. So those jobs have closed. Florida, of course, hired Billy Napier out of Louisiana. That hire, I love. Napier, of course, he's a disciple of Dabo and Saban, and he was waiting really for the perfect job to open up at Louisiana. He turned down a whole bunch of other SEC offers, other major offers before taking the job in Florida, and I think this is a phenomenal hire for the Gators. I am, as an SEC East fan, I'm definitely scared of Florida. I think Napier's a phenomenal recruiter and a phenomenal offensive mind, and I'm excited to see what he does. For the other major hires, Kalen DeBoer at Washington, I really like. Fresno State, of course, has had a nice rise to a top of the Mountain West kind of program. Jimmy Lake era in Seattle has been nothing short of a disaster. And I think Jake Haener, the quarterback from Fresno State, is going to be following Kalen DeBoer up to Seattle. That would be a huge boom for that program. I love Virginia Tech's coaching hire. Virginia Tech, of course, snagging Penn State's defensive coordinator, Brent Pry, which is a really, really, really huge get. Brent Pry, of course, was really the mastermind behind one of the stingiest defenses in all of college football. The Nittany Lions are going to miss him. And I think this is a great hire for the Hokies. Justin Fuente was supposed to be the man, turned out to just be a mirage. Never was able to really get past that peak of 8-4. I think Virginia Tech is now a player in the ACC because of this hire. Give it a couple years, but don't be surprised. Of course, in Virginia, there was a shocker that Bronco Mendenhall stepping down from the spot at University of Virginia. Nobody saw that coming. So UVA now has an opening, which is exciting and interesting. Came out of nowhere. I'm sure they feel a little bit spurned because this is after so many of these huge hires have been filled elsewhere. So they're a little bit late to the game in terms of interviewing and whatnot. Sonny Dykes going from SMU to TCU. I love that hire, of course. He doesn't have to move, just has to get in his helicopter and go across the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. That's a good hire for TCU. He's been able to recruit the area well, and TCU needs to keep winning Dallas in terms of their recruiting prowess. But enough about the jobs that have been filled. I think we need to talk about the jobs that have not been filled. And that starts with Oklahoma. Who takes the Oklahoma job? Brent Venables, the defensive coordinator at Clemson. He was the rumored guy to take the job. There's whispers and murmurs going around college football that are saying, yeah, well, Venables is going to Oklahoma, not as the DC, or not as the head coach, but as a defensive coordinator, because apparently Dabo is going to be going to OU as well. I'll believe that when I see it. I can't see Dabo leaving Clemson. It would be crazy and hilarious, and it would break the internet all over again if that happens. I cannot see it happening. Who else could fill the OU? I could see a guy like Luke Fickell. I could see maybe a Jay Norvell or Josh Heupel. Shane Beamer is staying at South Carolina. He's not going back to OU. That's a tough spot because Oklahoma was left in a position where they're losing all these recruits. They're losing, of course, not just Lincoln. They're losing Alex Grinch, who's their defensive coordinator. I actually think Venables winds up taking it as a head coach. I think the Dabo stuff is crazy. There's no way in hell that happens. And if it does happen, I'm going to go live immediately. Like that's like an emergency podcast kind of thing. But I cannot see Dabo going to Oklahoma. So Brent Venables is going to take the Oklahoma job as head coach, not defensive coordinator. You guys are nuts if you think he's going to Oklahoma as a DC to follow Dabo. Dabo is not leaving Clemson. But I think Brent Venables will take the Oklahoma job. So chalk that down. The other big crazy rumor right now is that Oregon is going to lose Mario Cristobal to Miami. And I have become very, very critical of Mario Cristobal. I don't think he can win big games down the stretch. He's a great recruiter, great face of the Oregon program. I think he's kind of the West Coast James Franklin. Oregon is not a championship contender under Cristobal. They're a Rose Bowl team at best. I don't see it. He hasn't been able to prove that he can win those big games in November, and that has been hammered down, especially with the way these Utah games have gone. So I can't see Cristobal succeeding in Oregon the way people would like him to. If he leaves Oregon, I'm not so sure this is a terrible loss for U of O. He's a great fit in Miami. Of course, he's a Southern Florida native. He'd be able to keep a lot of those recruits close to home as opposed to maybe going up the road to Alabama or Florida or Georgia. I don't know who Oregon would replace him with, but Cristobal is a good fit at Miami, someone to revitalize that brand, maybe bring the U back to what it should be. Even though I'm not so sure you can really make the U become the U again, it's a tough job because of the geographical stuff. You're playing in a stadium 45 minutes away from your campus. Like, it's tough to get students out there. It's tough to get fans out there. I don't love exactly how Miami has been run as a program. I think they need a stadium on campus to succeed. And they haven't reached that peak, of course, since the Orange Bowl was turned down. But yeah, Cristobal could bring them back to what they should be, especially with Clemson starting to lose their recruiting battles to Georgia a bit more. There's a door that's going to open in the ACC. I'm not so sure that Florida State stays down forever. I think FSU eventually picks things back up under Mike Norvell. I think Norvell winds up being the guy at FSU. They had a terrible season this year, but maybe with NC State and Pitt, maybe Pat Narduzzi winds up leaving. Maybe a guy like Dave Doran at NC State, he winds up running the conference. Or I'm not sure. The ACC is very up in the air, and Dave Clawson at Wake Forest, he's done a phenomenal job, and nobody's going to deny that. The ACC is weird because Clemson, there's no way they're down forever. But then again, if maybe there is some truth to the Dabo rumors, and if that's true, then who knows? Who knows? It's a very perilous time to predict anything in college football. That continues on with the Heisman talk. And I think, of course, we're going to know about our finalists soon enough. My Heisman finalists. And it's a really, really tough discussion because for a while, everybody said it was going to be Kenneth Walker. And Kenneth Walker wasn't the guy Michigan State needed him to be down the stretch. I think two names are set in stone for Heisman finalists. And I will tell you those after I get a little bit more water. Goodness gracious. You know what? I'm going to power through this right now. I have Bryce Young and Aiden Hutchinson as Heisman locks to be finalists. Aiden Hutchinson, I think he's going to be drafted ahead of Kayvon Thibodeau. Aiden Hutchinson is the best defensive lineman in college football. I think he might wind up being a better player in the NFL than Kayvon Thibodeau. What he has done, and it's not just him, it's David Ajabo helping out in the edge for Michigan as well. But Hutchinson's the motor. He's the guy that drives the entire force. He's the captain of that defense. He's broken the single-season sack record for Michigan. He is a huge part in why they are playing in Indianapolis tonight. I think Heisman, to me, represents not just individual stats, but your overall importance to a team. It's very much an MVP. How are you the most valuable player in your program? How much did you help your program get to where they are? And I think Aiden Hutchinson is 110%. a big part of that. And Bryce Young, you saw it last week against Auburn. He pulled his team out from sure disaster, a 99-yard drive. That throw to Ja'Cory Brooks, unbelievable. That's a Heisman moment and a half. I think he winds up winning it. But who's the third? There's always three. And the third is such a difficult discussion. Maybe it's Jordan Davis at Georgia. I think he's the third best player on that defensive line after Adam Anderson, who, of course, he's dealing with some legal stuff right now. So don't know if we ever see him come back into a Georgia uniform. And Nolan Smith, of course, going off the other edge at UGA. Could it be Kenneth Walker? Maybe. Could it be? Man, that is a discussion that is a very, very, could it be Desmond Ridder? Could it be? There's so many different ways you could go with the Heisman talk. It could be Jordan Davis. I think that's a discussion worth having. Maybe a guy like Stetson Bennett, believe it or not, he's flown under the radar as good as he's been. I think the two locks right now are Hutchinson and Young. Maybe Kenny Pickett, maybe CJ Stroud, but how much did Stroud lose his luster against Michigan? The game wasn't on CJ Stroud. And CJ Stroud has been good enough where a guy like Quinn Ewers, who I thought was going to push CJ Stroud out of the program, it's been the exact opposite. Stroud has pushed Ewers out of the program. But it's so crazy to look at where we are Heisman-wise as opposed to who people thought was going to win the Heisman at the beginning of the year, where the odds were at the start of the year. Spencer Rattler, Sam Howell, none of those guys are close. Howell, yeah, he's still a top 10 pick, maybe. Matt Corral, he could be a Heisman candidate, but that second loss is a little bit tough to overcome. It's a really, really, really tough discussion to be had. And I think Bryce Young is the favorite and winds up winning the whole thing. But look to Hutchinson, Young, and Stroud are my finalists right now, and I'll put that down right now. Something tells me that the masses are going to want a Selection Sunday show tomorrow. So to that, I will say, heck yeah, I'll be back tomorrow for sure. Make sure to download and subscribe, all that fun stuff. Enjoy your championship Saturday. Games are going to start in about 2.5 hours, give or take. And one last thing. Something tells me I'm going to be wrong on that Iowa pick, but I had to pick one upset. I couldn't go the whole week just picking favorites because what's the fun in that, right? Anyway, I will see you all tomorrow. And with that, stay safe, stay happy, enjoy your championship Saturday. And for Henry's sake, go blue. See you in 24 hours.